Amelia shook her head in disbelief as she recounted the words her son, Tommy, had spoken to her that morning. "You never listened to me, Mom," he had said, eyes filled with unshed tears, frustration bursting from his voice as if there was someone else living inside him. His language was far too reminiscent of his father's, her ex-husband, Daniel, a master manipulator and expert in emotional puppetry. Daniel was the kind of man who wore charm like a crown. In public, his kindness and charisma were almost blinding. Strangers never believed Amelia when she spoke of the things that transpired outside of the spotlight, in the confines of their home. What people saw was a father basked in the radiant light of fatherhood, painting vibrant images of paternal love. But Amelia knew all too well that his artistry was a facade concealing a much darker canvas. In the beginning, it seemed benign, his demand for shared custody that seemed equally fair and logical. Amelia had hoped it might even be a step toward their fractured family healing. Little did she know, Daniel's endgame was much more insidious. Tommy had just turned 10 when the small, innocuous seeds were planted. It started with whispered comments and playful jibes. "Children don't really need boundaries, they need freedom," Daniel would say over dinner, framing Amelia's rules as demeaning shackles. On birthdays and special occasions, Daniel's gifts grew more extravagant, each a shimmering token of rebellion against Amelia's guardianship. "It's for your own good," Daniel would insist whenever Tommy quibbled about his mother's instructions, his words dripping with saccharine poison, convincing Tommy that his own desires were neglected by anyone other than his father. As the months turned to years, the chasm between Tommy and Amelia widened, each interaction tainted by the seeds of doubt planted by his father. It culminated to a point where Tommy's affections and behaviors seemed authored not by a 10-year-old child, but by the narcissistic hand of Daniel's control. Amelia fought to rekindle their bond, signing up for therapy sessions and enrolling in parenting workshops, desperate for answers on how to pull her son back from the toxic influence enveloping him. The therapist spoke of triangulation, the deliberate attempt by Daniel to pit parent against child, a chess game where Daniel moved pieces by emotions alone. Determined to break free from this sinister choreography, Amelia focused on reinforcing her relationship with Tommy through empathy, openness, and patience. Together, they pursued activities that Tommy loved but had become tainted by his father's opinions. Art, which he had abandoned, basketball, which he no longer watched, each became a bridge back to the closeness they once knew. Each day was a gamble, with no guarantee of victory over the shadow that Daniel cast. Yet, Amelia held on, knowing that her perseverance and love for Tommy were brighter than the manipulations that sought to divide them. The ultimate endgame wasn't just about reclaiming control over Tommy's young heart. It was about reigniting that love that was his own, untouched and real, severed of Daniel's control. With each gentle affirmation of trust and affection, a small part of Tommy seemed to burn brighter, a flicker of hope that whispered the promise of a future where he could grow into a man on his own terms, free from the shackles of manipulation. Amelia knew the journey was long, but felt assured that one day Tommy would see through the facade his father had created, stripping the mask of his narcissistic puppeteer and reclaiming his independence.